Hi everyone, I'm Casey McGinnis with the Center for Global and Regional Environmental Research.
Hi, I'm Andrea Cohen. I'm a board member of the Iowa United Nations Association.
And we're here in Paris, France for COP21, the annual UN Climate Summit. We're talking about different events and how they relate to Iowa. Andrea, can you talk a little bit about your focus while you're here?
I'm here primarily to look at human rights activities and their relationship with climate change. Primarily the talk has been about the science and the technology about climate change and very little about the impact on people, and those are the most important stakeholders in all of this. But I gather your focus has been a little different from mine.
Yeah, so my focus has been, I've been going to a lot of different events, but I have ended up at some soil, water quality events, agricultural events, things like that that relate to rural Iowans, farmers, agricultural workers. I went to a really interesting event yesterday. It was called Agriculture in a Post-Kyoto Protocol World.
Okay.
So it's a number of panelists talking about what agriculture means, what agricultural laborers need to be doing now that Kyoto is maybe being surpassed by potentially a COP21 agreement. There's a lot of optimism there, but one of the interesting speakers was the president of the World Organization of Farmers. Her name was Evelyn Nguleka, and she gave a really interesting presentation. I got to talk to her a little bit afterward about agriculture and its sort of a relation to human rights. I think we have a clip from that. Let's go to that clip.
People are leaving the rural areas. Why? Not because they want to come and live in the cities, but because that is where the food is found. But then we need to take that technology, we need to make agriculture more attractive so that people can be able to stay in the rural areas, be productive and take care of their needs. We need to take on a policy level also, that is for governments, especially for Africa, for Asia, for least developed countries. There needs to be infrastructure development so that people do not migrate to come and have a certain lifestyle. People should be able to have a decent lifestyle where they are, and that is going to reduce on the migration.
So yeah, a little bit there from that clip about agriculture and its relation to urbanization, right? Because farmers who can't really work the land anymore are being forced to move into cities. And President Nguleka really wants people to be able to stay on their land and stay in the farms. But you went to an event today that was about urbanization and human rights and its relation to climate change.
Exactly, and that's where I think that's an interesting combination of all of this, because this whole notion of everybody moving into the cities has ramifications in the cities. And one project that I really got excited about, especially for the UNA, is called the Carbon Literacy Project. And what they're trying to do there, it's piloted in Manchester, and what they're trying to do is get the entire community involved in becoming carbon literate and what that means. And that's an awareness of the carbon dioxide costs and impacts of everyday activities and the ability and motivation to reduce emissions on an individual, community, and organizational basis. And I think that's really important, certainly from a human rights perspective. It's about us as stakeholders being affected by it, but it also means that we as stakeholders can do something about it. So this project is to educate not only citizens and get them motivated and moving on that, but it's also employers and it's also universities, and apparently they've even gotten it into coursework in a variety of schools at the University of Manchester. So I'm excited about that, and I spoke with Dave Coleman, who piloted this project with his group, and we're going to try and get something going between Iowa City and Manchester, which is not a bad thing. So I'm really, really excited about that.
That's great. And I think we have a clip from Dave Coleman here. We can look at that.
If we're talking about human rights, surely the most fundamental human right is to have a safe, healthy planet to live on and exist on. If we're going to ask people to address climate change, it can't be about forcing people to stop doing things and have a poorer life. It must be a richer life in the widest sense of that word. And it must be a life that sustains and improves. And if we're going to be successful in our interventions, it needs to be that sustaining and improving philosophy that we have.
Yeah, I think that's a significant clip because today is actually it's the International Human Rights Day, right?
Exactly.
That's great. And you know what else is great about today is the UN General Assembly declared 2015 the International Year of the Soil, which I think is really significant. It says that today I went to a really exciting event about soil, about agriculture, soil health. And one of the speakers there, her name was Debbie Barker from the Center for Food Safety. And she was talking about bringing carbon back into the soil. And there's something really exciting right now about the problem that we have is that there's too much carbon in the atmosphere.
Right.
But there's also another problem is that there's not enough carbon in the soil. And so if we can find ways to get carbon from the atmosphere into the soil,
right,
that's great. And there's actually a technology that does it, and they're called plants. Basically, yeah. So this is a great event. What she talked about is what healthy soil can do, not just for farmers, but even for climate change, even for mitigating climate change. She did a really interesting demonstration of different kinds of soil and porousness. I think we have a clip of that.
So everybody go.
Okay. Great.
Or the whole thing.
This is organics.
So you can hold it up and you can see it's starting to drip in the organic soil, it's not dripping in the conventional soil, and it's dripping in the biodynamic soil. So we're looking at water infiltration rates here. Still sitting there in the conventional soil. So how fast can the water get into the soil? The other thing that we can take a look at is how much water is going to be held. So if you had a completely flat field in a few hours, you could probably sit here and hold this and wait till the water stayed in there. But if it's not a completely flat field, that water is going to run off the surface, and what's going to carry with it? It's going to carry with it synthetic nutrients, and it's going to carry with it topsoil.
So I think that demonstration was really good. Actually, Debbie has given that demonstration to farmers to kind of help explain why it's important to have good soil health. And they've given demonstrations not just in the US, but in Africa, in developing nations, to really kind of help farmers understand what they need to do.
I think one of the interesting things is that the factual information that we're all getting here can be extremely complicated and people don't understand it. So things like the demonstration you saw and things like the Carbon Literacy Project bring it down to a level that we can all understand it. And if we don't buy into it, we're not going to do anything about it. So I'm really glad that these are kinds of panel discussions that we're able to get to because it's only going to help us in the end.
Right. Well, thanks so much for your insight. Keep in touch with us on Twitter at CGRER. You can also go to iowaenvironmentalfocus.org and your blog, which is
COP21memo.weebly.com.
There's all kinds of information about Iowans here at COP21, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks again.